listeners and viewers, welcome to this session. Today's topic is Gender and Development Discourse from Theory to Academic Discipline and Praxis. You must all be wondering, why do we need to learn Gender and Development Discourse in detail? This course is about gender auditing and gender budgeting. Gender auditing and gender budgeting is a tool as part of the gender and development discourse. Thus, I have decided to explain what is gender and development discourse. Why do we need to learn in detail about gender and development discourse? How gender and development discourse will further help our learners to learn more about gender auditing and gender budgeting. Welcome to this session. Learning outcomes of this session is we look explicitly at the development from a gender perspective and feminist contribution in the entire development process to alter the entire development by proposing alternative perspectives and theories for the inclusive, gender sensitive, sustainable development. This is the learning outcome of today's session. First, let me start introducing what is development, how feminists they have intervened the existing development process, how did they bring women's perspectives into the entire development perspectives. Let us start learning about what is development. Once we understood what is development, then let us learn how the feminist intervention in bringing the entire development process from a gender perspective. The process of development conceived over a period harmed the women and marginalized. It did not bring the desired improvements in the lives of the considerable percentage of the women population, especially in developing countries. The development process thus led to environmental degradation and an increase in poverty among women and the marginalized. The existing development paradigm that was started immediately after the Second World War in 1945 does not provide much space for sustainable development. Some assumptions existed like GDP led economic growth will reduce poverty, and another assumption is that GDP led economic growth will contribute to the well-being of the people. It will increase in income of family. Once it will increase the income of family, the assumption is that it will provide access to all facilities, especially health and education and economic growth. And once once it increases the income of the family, the assumption is that economic growth will reduce health maladies like malnutrition. This was the existing assumption. Looking at this assumption did not become a reality. The growth is uneven among developing countries and lower than the expected level. This is what till 1970s and 75s everybody they have seen. The projected growth by the World Bank and other agencies are over optimistic. Some countries achieved the expected growth through various strategies and reforms in governance like macroeconomic stability, trade liberalization, decentralization of power, fiscal decentralization and public sector reforms. However, the growth achieved was not without drawbacks. This is what the study clearly pointed out, the drawbacks of the GDP-led development. Feminist economists did criticize the current development paradigm and stated that the process of rapid economic growth bubbles up instead of trickling down. You all must know what is trickling down. The trickling down is that once the development is happen at the macro level, the benefit of the development over a period of time, like it will spread at the every level of the society and every individual of the society. The development at the macro level over a period of time, the assumption is that it will get benefited by everyone in the society. But this trickling down process did not happen. Instead, the rapid economic growth bubbles up. The existing economic growth affects the environment and pressures. There will be a so much of pressure on small and medium farmers, primarily women, to give up agriculture due to high input cost. It also give women to migrate into urban areas to join in the informal sector. As far as India is concerned, the rapid economic growth in the past 30 years, 1991 to 2001, could not reach everyone in the society, proving that there is no trickle down effect. India's real wages are stagnant, in which mainly the upper middle class office goers get benefited. The public revenue generated through rapid economic growth has not expanded physical and social infrastructure. This is not only about India, I am talking about all developing countries. Like India, other developing countries also they face the same issues like protected drinking water, school education, health services and drainage facilities have been neglected among women and other marginalized section. Like how the development proceeds over some time. The development process realized in the 19th century perceived development as a means to address remedies for the shortcomings and progress towards achieving socio-economic development. Even though the development process and the developments thoughts that enter the process of development, the development thoughts among like academicians as well as policy makers, it started in the 19th century. Europe and many other countries experienced enormous changes in the 20th century to bring socio-economic progress and improvement in every sector based on their experience in the 19th century progress and failures. How to integrate gender into development? This is our question. So far we have criticized the existing development process, and as well as we studied like certain research results that was we have discussed in the introduction. Now let us see how to integrate gender into development. Decolonization and the realization of the importance of growth and development by the newly decolonized countries after the end of Second World War led to the emergence of development process supported by various development theories. Two crucial beginnings were marked during that period, including the establishment of United Nations and the emerging two significant political tasks, that is liberalism and communism. During that period, immediately after the Second World War, one is the decolonization and the realization of the importance of growth and development by the newly decolonized countries after the Second World War. That led to emergence of development process supported by various development theories. Second crucial beginnings were marked during that period, including the establishment of United Nations and the emerging two significant political thought, that thought is liberalism and communism. Liberalism and communism contributed to the beginning of two significant economic changes that led to the debate on development. Looking at these different stages of development process, one could find a lack of debate on gender concerns. The feminists brought the concerns of neglecting women in the entire development process. The study led by Esther Boschrup on the African agricultural system, her study first published in 1970, highlighted women's contribution to agriculture and industrial development. It further has opened up the debate among policy makers on including women in the entire development process. The United Nations also played a crucial role in integrating women into development debate. They declared, United Nations declared the UN Decade for Women. That decade is 1976 to 1986, which marked the era of inquiry and development. Like I have already talked about the Esther Boschrup study. Her study has significantly contributed for bringing women's concerns in the entire development process. Her study was basically, she has collected data in Africa. Like as per her study, women, they very much contributed for the for agricultural activities, but their contribution was not recognized and they are not able to access even though they are contributing for the entire agricultural system, but when it comes to like access to land and other resources, including access to institutional support and other government support, it is very negligible. Actually in 1995, based on the Esther Boschrup study and the declaration of UN Decade for Women in 1976 to 86, the UN also declared 1975 as the International Women's Year. Subsequently, by organizing 4 international women conferences and subsequent development policy approaches like welfare approach, it has actually conceived during 1950 and 60. When it comes to equity approach, that approach was discussed, and there is a governments and other international and transnational agencies, they started formulating policies based on the equity approach from 1970 onwards. Then anti-poverty approach was emerged in 1970s onwards, efficiency approach was emerged in 1970, and empowerment approach was emerged in 1990. All these approaches, it showed a path to include gender issues into the entire development process. Along with this, feminist and development experts contributed to theorizing various approaches, including women in development, women and development, gender in development, and gender and development. All this culminated in the integration of gender perspectives into development. Now let us learn about what is gender and development approach. As far as gender and development approach has emerged concerned, it has emerged in 1980s as an alternative to women in development, women and development, and gender in development. It has a theoretical root in socialist feminism. It has bridged the gap left by the modernization theorist by linking the relation of production and reproduction and taking all aspects of women's lives. Socialist feminists have identified that socialization of production and reproduction is the primary reason for women's oppression. Thus, gender and development approach focuses on social relations and questions the roles given to men and women in different societies. According to GAD approach, the roles assigned to men and women in different societies were due to the socialization process and the oppression that begin from the socialization process. This is the main theoretical understanding as far as gender and development approach is concerned. The socialist feminists, they have predominantly contributed for the development of gender and development approach. Although the gender and development approach does not question the significance of more extraordinary women's participation in society's socio-economic and political life, the primary concern of the gender and development approach is the reasons for women's oppression and the reasons for assigning secondary roles for women in all societies irrespective of their location. The socialist feminists combined with their analysis with Marxist feminist analysis on patriarchy and attempted to address women's concerns. The Marxist feminist analysis on patriarchy has a significant contribution to integrate the patriarchy into the gender and development approach. Thus, the Marxist, socialist, even liberal feminist also contributed for bringing gender and development approach. Gender and development is not considering women in isolation. It considers the social construction of gender and the assignment of specific roles, responsibilities to men and women and society's expectations from the men and women. However, radical feminists consider female solidarity and emphasize female exclusion. In contrast to radical feminists, the gender and development approach welcomes the potential contribution of men and women who share equity and social justice concerns. The gender and development approach does not consider women's and men's productive and reproductive activities and lives to exclude each other. It analyzes the nature of women's work and their contribution within and outside the households, including non-commodity production. Feminists who were instrumental in designing the gender and development approach address the concerns of women from developing countries. According to gender and development scholars, women from developing countries perform 3 roles. These roles are they contribute for productive, reproductive and community managing roles. As far as productive work includes subsistence economic activities, that is what Esther Boshrop in her study she has brought and she extensively analyzed the work contributed by the women in the agricultural activities. Reproductive work includes childbearing, child rearing and care activities. As far as community managing work comprises political activities at the local level, sustainable use of scarce common property resources, maintenance of common property resources, sustainable consumption and recharging of water and fuel. The GAD approach has rejected the public-private dichotomy commonly used and undervalues women's family contributions. Both socialist and Marxist feminists give importance to women's status in the private sphere. It gives attention to the women facing oppression at the family to analyze which conjugal relationships are based on. That is very important because of this gender and development approach, they have insisted on bringing appropriate laws to address the women's oppression at the private space. This gender and development approach also emphasize the state's role. It is very important because state could also bring appropriate policies, programs, laws to address the women's issues and gender concerns. Laws, policies and programs play a significant role in addressing women's concern, as well as it plays a significant role to bring necessary changes in the lives of the both male and female and other genders that will contribute to bring equity and equality in the society. It also stresses that the state should also promote women's development and contributes by formulating appropriate policies and programs to address gender concerns. The GAD approach clearly states that women are the active participant of the development process rather than passive recipients of state and other agencies' welfare measures. In the development process, the gender and development approach expected women to come forward and mobilize themselves collectively to raise their voice in the public space to bring equity and equality. It recognized the contribution of class solidarities and distinctions, arguing that patriarchy operates within and across classes to oppress women. Socialist feminists and researchers working within the gender and development perspective explore interrelations among gender, class, race, caste and development. As the gender and development approach believes in state intervention, it also focuses on women's legal rights, as I have already mentioned, by suggesting that state must take appropriate measures by developing tools like affirmative action, gender mainstreaming, gender analysis, gender auditing and budgeting to integrate gender issues in policies and programs. That is why I was explaining gender and development approach. All these tools like affirmative action, gender mainstreaming, gender analysis, gender auditing and budgeting are the significant tools in the gender and development approach to integrate gender issues into policies and programs. We are elaborately studying about gender auditing and budgeting. I decided to take one session on gender and development approach that will help you to learn further about gender and development approach, as well as there are various tools which is available to make necessary policies and programs to address the gender and development issues. It has also stressed the importance of increasing women's percentage in all legislative bodies. Gender and development wanted to re-examine the social structures and institutions and the changes to be brought in the existing social structure and institutions to bring gender justice at all levels in all the structures and institutions, ultimately bringing a shift in power relations. Gender and development approach also talked about the commitment of states and other agencies to bring structural changes at all levels. With this, I would like to conclude that it is through finding new ways of working with difference, expanding the possibilities for building appropriate forms of solidarity to create new alliances for influence and action that bridge old divides, that feminist engagement with the development can begin to meet some of the formidable challenges that we all now face. Thank you so much for listening this lecture. Once you listen about gender and development approach, then you could able to place this gender auditing and gender budgeting as part of the gender and development approach, and you could able to learn more about gender auditing and gender budgeting in a clear manner. Thank you so much.